So just whilst that comes up, I will wait for the next slide. Here we go. So just a reminder as to why this industry matters. My team did a little bit of maths. 14,000 hours is the amount of time the average person in the USA spends on their entire education, from kindergarten through to age 12. 78,000 hours is the amount of time someone spends watching TV and film. This is how important it is. This is why this industry is so central. 648 billion is the size of the US media and entertainment industry. This is very focused on the US because the data is much more available there, but I'm sure, and I'd love to hear comparable steps from elsewhere. 18 million people bought tickets to Barbieheimer, 2.7 million jobs, 5.1 soccer fans around the world. In fact, actually, David will probably tell me it's much more than that. And this is something which is recognized and understood by the United Nations. We just had David shared with us, Article 12 of the Paris Agreement. Sorry, you're just getting a little anticipating that. Article 12 of the Paris Agreement, what I believe is one of the most neglected articles in the Paris Agreement, and yet the one ring to rule them all. The article of the Paris Agreement, which would unlock the entire rest of what we desperately need, which would be a public enthusiasm for change. That article based on Article 6 of the Convention. We have this ECHA steering group. We have Lydia here. We have Sam here. I think we have other members of the ECHA steering group. Culture Action Steering Group. Working here in order to engage the film and TV industries. And of course, we have the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, which itself acknowledged the fact that storytelling has a key role going forward. Now, what is the current story of climate change? I would agree that right now, across the world, the overarching overstory is a Frankenstein story. Man makes monster, and then monster destroys man. It's an earned dystopia. That the story is that we caused climate change, and so we deserve what it's going to do to us. The problem with that story, the problem with that narrative is, of course, it's not true. The people who cause climate change are the ones least likely to suffer from it, and those who were the least of cause of climate change, notably in the global south, who are going to cause it. The problem with the Frankenstein story, almost this narrative necessity of the fact that climate change is going to get us, untrue story. See this earned dystopia story being just repeated over generations and over decades. These are two posters from WWF, who are dear friends of mine, but the message of this poster has not changed between 2004 and 2024. Basically, kicking clock, everything is going wrong, it's melting, we're dying. It's just not changed. The message has not moved on. We are not introducing new stories, new characters, new outcomes. We're not capturing the attention of people. We're not capturing their energy. So we need a plot twist. Some of you are old enough to know what this movie was. Some of you will probably be going, I don't know what that is. I believe that storytelling can help overcome three crucial challenges that we have right now. One is the message that taking action on sustainability requires sacrifice. Hey, it might require sacrifice from a few. If you've got a private jet, maybe you won't be able to have a private jet. But the vast majority of people, most of us across the global north and the global south, will only benefit from these changes required. We will benefit from the availability of renewable energy and the fact that it's able to be distributed to people who are currently without modern energy. It will benefit our health if we're able to deal with air pollution and be able to change our diets towards more sustainable diets. This isn't a sacrifice narrative. It is an abundance, a health, and a joy narrative. And that's something that storytelling can help. Storytelling can help us with agency. When we ask people about whether climate activism makes any difference, they don't believe it does. So storytelling can show what one person, one community is able to achieve at scale. I was thinking about the movie of the boy who harnessed the wind. That one, Tamseel shared that story with me, that one lad who was able to absolutely transform and save his entire village by building a wind turbine. what storytelling is able to teach us, and fatalism. I'm more scared of fatalism than I am of climate change. Climate change is just chemistry. Fatalism is human consciousness. We know more about the chemistry of our planet than we do about how our own brain works. We know more about the planetary science than about neuroscience. And so actually fatalism means that people don't try, they don't work, they don't invest, they don't get jobs in climate change, they don't take action, they don't take activities. So how do we solve these things? By powerful benefits. We solve the issue of sacrifice by showing everything that's in it for us. We solve the issue of agency by understanding that only a small proportion of people, very small proportion of people, are motivated by traditional green messages, and the vast majority of people are motivated by fun, esteem, status, and success. We need to reach those audiences, the Barbie audience, and we need to by showing stories of what is possible, compelling, beautiful, exciting narratives. Documentary is a huge part of this, but it is not all of it. Romance, soap operas, reality TV, cooking shows, sports, the content people actually watch rather than the content that they feel that they should watch. So if we can take the power of storytelling, if we can put it together with the scale and reach of film and TV, if we can make sure that we're using that to tell the story of solutions, then we start unlocking change like we've never seen before. Thank you so, so very much.
No, I enjoy the lipstick all over this, Solitaire. Don't you worry. Don't you worry. That was a whistle-stop tour, but my goodness, so many takeaways, and you probably saw people snapping away and still are snapping away at your email address. At least you didn't put your mobile on there and they'll be WhatsApping you forever. Okay, we are going to try again with the videos. So let's see, shall we? Okay, so in a moment, we're going to hear and watch a sizzle from Pluck.tv, who's represented on stage, one of our speakers today. Let's kick off with a video from Sustainable Entertainment Alliance. Fingers crossed it works. Let's have a look.
Hey, want to see a story about climate change?
Oh, no. No!
We get it. We really do. Climate change is scary. It can make us feel, well, a little anxious.
I'm just trying to articulate the science.
I know, but it's like so stressful.
And we turn to movies and TV to escape. But what if we changed the question? Want to see a great story? Stories can engage with the climate, even as they entertain.
All right, but only because I like Earth.
Whether they are dramatic.
What if the world was to get slightly warmer?
So if that happens,
we lose.
Or funny.
Happy Earth Day, everyone. I'm Recyclops. Did you know that an old milk carton can be sawed in half and used as a planter?
She's worried about the end of the planet. She's gotten the message that we're doomed.
Or stories of courage.
Magical. She'd say everything you want to dream away. We are legends every day.
It doesn't feel right to do nothing.
It can break something in 2 seconds, but it can take forever to fix it. That's why we have to be careful on this earth.
Stories about protecting what you love.
Come with me.
Dubai Air is owned by a horrible company, one that has turned the southern coast of Nigeria into a hellish, fiery swamp. I can no longer wear their name on my chest.
How will you be remembered?
There's someone who fought back.
Did you just proactively protect the environment?
Maybe.
Well, our theme is climate crisis meets extinction event, but in a fun way.
Okay.
Oh, it's breathtaking.
Or a story of adventure.
Wakanda will no longer watch from the shadows. We must find a way to look after one another as if we were one single tribe.
Climate change is the story of our time. And it's being told right now in small moments and blockbuster events that are connecting with audiences worldwide.
Together we can change the world.
So, Want to tell a great story?
Let's get it done.
Go to climateonscreen.org, where climate and great stories connect.
Today, let me tell you a story.
A journey that began in 2017 with one big idea: to help anyone, no matter their follower count or viral success, become a storyteller and monetize their work. From the start, we have empowered people to share their unique stories with the world. Original or branded, Plug TV has made it possible for creators to tell authentic stories across borders and languages. Plug TV takes a decentralized approach that gives creators and brands control over their narratives and ideas, enabling them to shape their success and impact independently of conventional gatekeepers. Today, over 250,000 storytellers from 22 countries trust Plug TV. Our community includes content creators, filmmakers, AR artists, marketers, and media partners, all working together to make meaningful content. With hundreds of shows, Plug TV is transforming how audiences connect with stories across phones, TVs, and even on the big screens. And here's what makes us unique. Plug TV is one-stop hub where creators, brands, and marketers come together to scale authentic, ground-level stories. We are giving creators the tools to learn, produce, market, and monetize their work. Marketers get direct access to impactful stories at a lower cost, reaching audiences on a massive scale. With more than 100 partners and a reach of over 1 billion, Plug TV is redefining the storytelling landscape worldwide, because storytelling should be for everyone. This is our journey, and we are just getting started.
Right, on we go. Great to have you with us. We've got quite a lot to cover in quite a short space of time, so I would appreciate your, not literally, but figuratively, mic drop moments. I want your top headlines. I work in broadcasting, I work in sport, I work at a fast pace. Sam, I know you're my kind of man who can match me on this. Excellent. Okay, can you just start off, Catherine, and everyone to follow, in 60 seconds only, who are you? What does your job entail, and what is your approach to climate storytelling? Go.
Okay, my name's Catherine. I'm head of climate content at Bafta Albert, which is part of Bafta, the awards and arts charity, and we work with the industry in the UK, with the leading broadcasters and streamers in the UK to help support, inspire, and celebrate great climate content. Can I keep going?
You can. You keep going. Yeah, you still got time.
And we work with the broadcasters to sort of help them do that. So we have a training academy. We have the Albert Academy, which basically works with training creatives to give them the information and the sort of show them the variety of how they could approach this. So we have both editorial and training behind the scenes.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's it. Sorry, I was slightly flummoxed by the 60 seconds.
No, it's okay. It's okay.
There's much more.
No. Listen. Well, the good thing is that also we'll get some of the flesh on the bones of that in this conversation, but also we're going to show some examples a little bit later on, aren't we, Catherine?
Yeah,
so we'll get a real sort of picture of it, quite literally. Okay, Tamseel, to you next. Same question. Who are you? What is your job? And how do you approach climate storytelling?
So I'm obviously the founder and CEO of Plug TV. I'm based in India and Singapore, and I have at Plug TV. We take 3 approaches to climate storytelling, and looking at the crisis that we're in and the situation that happens. It could be an issue which is food, agriculture, air pollution, nature, conservation. The first step that we do is we go and find a community that is in the most vulnerable area there, and we identify them according to their different age groups, genres and stuff, and we train them to tell their own stories. The second part that we do is we work with creatives, creators, content creators. A lot of them are here in the audience, which I'm really happy to see as well. Filmmakers and brands and partners and platforms to get them to focus on the story, which means supply screens. When we say screens, I mean mobile phones, cinema screens, streaming platform screens. And the third part we do is when you've created an ecosystem like this for climate and nature, we actually create a storytelling engine that can be controlled by any partner, any philanthropy that really engages with the community. What you're able to do with that engine is to create a narrative that can dominate all screens and really create content in different formats all in one go. Yeah.
That's pretty impressive. Thank you very much for summing that up. So you're very much enablers. I think that's probably, if I could find one word, that's probably the one. Well, over to you. Welcome, my friends. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
So my name is Wadamaya from Ghana. Basically on a journey to challenge the statement that negativity sells instead of positivity create impact and change. So I'm on a journey to showcase Africa in a positive light, and recently fell in love with climate conversation, and I feel like, you know, the climate conversation has been in a bubble, and I'm trying my possible best to get the people outside the bubble into the bubble in a way of telling the story in a fun, educative, and entertaining way. And most importantly, make the climate conversation very sexy. Thank you.
I love that. I absolutely. Do you know what? I was doing an event earlier, and one of my speakers used that word. I was 100% there for it. I cannot say, you know, these things don't have to be dry. They do not have to be boring. And, you know, do a lot of your work on YouTube. So, yeah, fantastic. Thank you. Right, let's pass the mic down to Sam. Well, you've got an act to follow here, Sam.
I know. So the Sustainable Entertainment Alliance is a consortium of studios and streamers, mostly headquartered in the U.S., but working all over the world. And we work with our members to help support a more sustainable film and television industry. So we think about that in multiple ways, both in terms of our carbon footprint and how we are producing more sustainably, but also in terms of our cultural footprint and how we are best representing climate change and sustainability on screen. So we approach that in a couple of ways. We work to support creatives who want to tell these stories. As you saw in the reel earlier at climateonscreen.org, there's a whole bunch of resources and research and expert advisors for creatives who want to tell stories about climate change and want help doing so. And we also work with our members and with the industry to help understand how to best connect these stories with audiences, because I think even the most impactful story won't go that far if people aren't watching it. So there's that balance between making sure that it gets to a wide audience and also has a compelling message.
Yeah. So I see some similarities with Catherine as well. Indeed. In terms of providing people with the tools and helping the creatives still do their jobs to the best of their abilities, but including these very important narratives. And I hear you as well on, you know, you want it to be watched. I mean, I say this with sport, you know, you still got to have a compelling spectacle. The sustainability message that lies within it doesn't matter if what they're watching isn't compelling enough in itself. So I hear you on that one. I just wonder very briefly from all of the guests on the panel, has what you are doing changed significantly or not over the last few years, given the trajectory that we appear to be on right now? I mean, you know, we are in the present. I mentioned the sort of stats before. We're likely to sail over 1.5 degrees by 2030 from the Paris Accord. As our situation has become any more critical, has that made you tweak at all your approach? Tamseel, you are nodding at me, so I'll take your answer first.
I was actually nodding intentionally.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like that.
I think one of the most amazing things which have happened when we work with communities who are constantly telling stories, the world around us is changing, right? Like in India, you had the hottest year ever. These stories were never imagined, and people started telling these stories. Air pollution, when we started telling stories, was a crisis because nobody knew what the solution was. And in the last 2 years, what we've noticed is the idea of crisis works, but it works for a temporary moment, and the trend changes. It's because of like algorithms that keep evolving on various platforms. And the most amazing thing, which we've completely shifted our whole platform, and we've worked with creators to literally train them on this, is optimism and hope really, really create a different mechanism. Typical explainers, typical stories that were really popular earlier that used to go viral are slowly dying away when it comes to climate, because people want to see fun content that they can relate to and really take action. A series on Netflix can create a trend that impacts millions of people. A video can reach out to 1 million people, but it takes time for it to create a trend. And the work that creators like you are doing is pretty much the most amazing thing that I think we can hope for, getting out of the bubble.
Do you echo that, Woda? You know, the optimism and hope vibe? And I suspect I know the answer to that, but how has it changed? Has anything evolved in your own storytelling because of where we're at in the climate crisis?
I just have to be honest. This is my first ever COP, and this is my first time being here. I mean, recently I got myself involved in climate change stories, which I had no idea the effect of telling stories like that. So I am that guy who loves to create awareness. I am that guy who is not diplomatic. I just say it the way it is. So I went to a country in Africa because I travel within different countries in Africa. So I went to a country in Africa where, I don't know if you guys know the mighty Futerra Falls. Has any of you been there? So it gets to a season that it gets dried up. And I did not know. So I went to the falls and I'm like, oh my goodness, what is happening? These falls are dried up. So I took my phone and I'm like, okay, I guess this is the effect of climate change. And I think it didn't sit down well with the people when the video came out. Because apparently the country is experiencing load shedding, which is also effect because the river is actually dried up. Guess what happened? I got myself into trouble. The entire country said, no way, that's the effect of climate change. That is not true, you're lying. But guess what happened? The impact. The entire parliamentarian of the country went to where I stood to say that the falls are dried up, just to record a video and say, you know what? The young man was right. The falls are dry. So I believe that we need to start telling the stories the way it is so that, I mean, listen, can I be honest?
Yeah, that's why you're here.
And the words that I'm hearing, I don't even understand. Like, okay, UNFCCC, and I'm like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
Yo, the SDGs, and I'm like, can you just include us in the climate change conversation? Speak a simple language that my grandmother can understand or the young kid can understand.
It's a really good point, Wada. It's a really, really good point.
I think a big round of applause for that then.
Yeah, I mean, go on then. I love this, man. I love this already. You're welcome at any COP going forward, and you can go around changing all the signs to stuff that actually means something. Can I just ask a question to the audience? Just put your hand up. Who thinks the term sustainability is actually helpful? Would you rather keep it or would you rather ditch it? Keep it. At the back there. Keep it. Keep it. Interesting. Really interesting. We've got two very strong hands at the back there, some semi-hands here at the front and at the sides, and then a whole wave of no in the middle. I personally, and I try to avoid you, think that actually it confuses people. No one knows how to define it. No one knows what it means. It turns people off. It's long, it's complicated, and it is unsexy. Woda. So I'm with you on your sexy vibe, if that doesn't sound weird. Okay, that's interesting. I just wonder between you two, Sam and Catherine, have you noticed any tactics change? Anything, you know, in the shows that, you know, we saw on the clip from yours from the SEA side or you know, Bafta side, any kind of like examples that change that showed a sort of a change up, someone trying something new, something different? Sam.
Yeah, I mean, I think to Wada's point, like we need to tell these stories in ways that people engage with, and I think some of the most successful films and shows are ones that are authentic to their characters. So going and saying, tell a story about climate change is not always going to produce the most compelling content. But saying, you have a great story, how would your characters be influenced by climate change? How would that be impacting their lives? I think, you know, one of the things that we all know is climate change is impacting all of our lives every day in a ton of different ways. So being able to think through, okay, here's who my character is and how they approach the world, and here's how that, you know, is going to interact with climate change and intersect with it, makes it an authentic story that is compelling and creative and can really lift that up.
Okay. Anything to add, Catherine, on that?
I think very similar. I think there's a really great understanding within the industry that these stories, as you sort of heard from Solly's presentation earlier, that they fit into so many different genres. They fit in entertainment, they fit into drama, sport, film. You know, they're human stories. You know, they're stories of justice, of cost of living, of health, of love, of nature. You know, they're all really core stories that story makers have used time and time again to tell great stories. And I think there's a real awareness within the industry that there's actually a lot of opportunity in terms of storytelling. There was there's loads of great examples. I mean, ITV did a series called After the Flood. It was a crime drama. There was a murder mystery, or detective is probably the better way to say it, but it was all after a flood had happened. So you had the drama of everyone being moved into sort of temporary accommodation in the sports hall. You know, you've got there's so many options. Netflix have done one called Sen, and it's this wonderful. Sorry, it's probably American actually. Sorry, I'm not stealing. But there is basically sharks in the Seine, but it's got this beautiful kind of, sort of beautiful in a kind of American beauty kind of way, where there's just loads of plastic in the sea, and it adds to this really claustrophobic feeling that adds to the drama, and you know, that's brilliant. And I think genuinely storytellers are sort of realizing what the opportunity is, and I think that's really changing.
Do you know, I really like that notion, by the way, and I think we face it in just our travails, our attempts, our efforts to tackle climate change. You know, when I think about sport, it's not so much, and athletes, for example, not so much this feeling of having to or we should do something. It's actually we can do something. You're switching it into an opportunity, and athletes are now, when they're communicating, they see it as an opportunity to enhance their personal brand. They actually can really develop their own authentic storytelling themselves. They don't just need to talk about the game. They don't just need to talk about what endorsement they've got, what contract they've got. They can talk about a passion, a cause, and it can be really authentic and well-seated and deeply seated, and it can enhance everything about what they're about. So I think that's a really kind of good point to make. Let's sort of move on to sort of lessons from TV and film about climate storytelling. I wonder if actually there is, you know, a central word you can pin it on. I mean, and we talked a bit before about ambition and hope. To give you an example, for me, one of them is just simply purely connection. I think one of the reasons why we struggle in these zones over here, and why that message doesn't get out of the bubble to the great wider populace who are watching the TV news bulletins and they're kind of going, come on, you know, what's going on here, is because we are not managing to create and execute well enough that connection to make people feel, to make people care enough to listen, to engage, and then to take action, to have agency. So that's the one word that really, you know, I think really resonates with me. It needs to be resonant, it needs to be relevant, it needs to be emotional, it needs to meet people where they are. I'm sorry if I've stolen everyone else's options there for answers, but maybe you have your own thoughts, your own driving points. Go for it, Wada.
I think we need to stop being too serious. I mean, we mean business, yes, that's where we are. But at the end of the day, I feel like the climate activists, the climate influencers that I meet, they're too serious. You see, I mean, yeah, you got to be serious within business, but at the end of the day, find a fun way. I believe that each and everyone in this room, or each and everyone who attended COP29, needs to be an influencer. Influencer doesn't necessarily mean you have like a huge following you, but you have a family member, you have friends. Go back home, each one teach one, let's save the world together. As simple as that. I believe that that's the message that each and everyone in here needs to take back home. Next year, COP, don't come alone. Probably come with a brother, come with a sister, because you've been able to influence a family member and a friend.
That social ripple is important, isn't it? I think you're absolutely right. You know, I think one of the greatest fallacies, by the way, about climate change communication is that you're alone, you're the only one who cares. Because there's clearly lots of people who care. They've just never really been engaged on the topic, or not engaged well enough on the topic. And actually, if you do and you take it on positively, like you, then obviously that is going to have an outsized impact. I really like that idea. What's your best climate joke then? I've got one. What did the wind turbine say to the solar panel? I'm a big fan. Look, I'm allowed to do dad jokes, okay? Okay, right, any other, so I like that. A little touch of humour, I think it's very disarming. I think it can really help connect. Tamseel.
Well, just to follow up on your point, about in COP26, I met this amazing guy called Kato from Tuvalu. He was the first young person to come from Tuvalu, and he came in a shorts and t-shirt in Glasgow, which was like almost under 5 degrees. It was really cold, windy, and he's like, I don't even know what this is, but he literally got onto a flight somehow, through sponsorship, through support, to come to Glasgow and literally voice his opinion, saying that, hey, Tuvalu exists, is sinking, what can you do? And his story is that he wanted to be a musician, and he gave that up to literally come to different COPs. And last year, I think he finally took up music as his career while doing activism. And his process of that one story that he told, it was literally inspired about tens and hundreds of young delegations that you actually see in the Tuvalu Pavilion right now across COP. That started in COP26, and it's an amazing representation. Young people, especially Gen Alphas, right, are really creating content. The number one trend on Instagram, the number one trend on YouTube is content on self-worth, right? It's because this generation has this beautiful searchlight on their head that they really look inward. And if I pick up a point that Wade is saying, the most powerful stories are shared in micro communities. And that's what makes a story go viral, right? And it's usually a joke, a meme, a really engaging piece of content, a really cool trailer, or something very important that actually happened. And I think the next decade is all about micro communities and people becoming influencers through those communities. And just the last point, I know I'm taking a lot of screen time.
It's okay.
Last point. I watched this amazing werewolf movie like last week. It's called 3-2. It's an Indian movie. And it's amazing, right? It has ghosts. It has all kinds of things. And the movie ends on this amazing cliffhanger where the actor goes like, I want to go to New Delhi, and I'm really scared to go to New Delhi. And the guy goes like, why? Is it because of air pollution? He's like, no, there's another monster there which is comparable to it. And that was such a powerful line to end this historic movie, which is doing millions and millions across it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we need to change.
It's like ending Game of Thrones with some sort of little climate ref just kind of like, cheekily in there. And I think, I love this idea of this. It's really beautifully put, by the way, Tamseel, the searchlight that looks inwards. There's a guy who I know, you may well, have known him already, or you follow him, particularly if you're on Instagram, an influencer who is wonderfully gentle but so positive. His name is Sam Bentley. And Sam, getting some nodding heads here, but if you don't know, just look him up. He is just so wonderful. My wife has a crush on him, and he sent me his book, and it is just wonderful. It is the uplifting climate stories. It is the little bit that punctures the doom and gloom in your feed, and I think that is the stuff that I actually remember. Because Sam is animated, he's kind of talking about some really amazing things. It could be in tech, it could be in film, it could be in something else. So I think that, that very much is in the same vibe. Can I ask you two a similar question about what lessons from film and TV, but also I think because I'm thinking with like someone like Ode in mind, the youth voice for me is still not well enough represented at all. Not just here, events like these, blatantly not. That needs to improve. And at events that I do, I always say, okay, well, gender equity is clearly very important, but where are the young people? Because we're still average age 45. And eventually we'll die, and then they'll carry on, and they'll be trying to mop up the mess that we made. So we need them to be represented on the stage meaningfully, with agency and with a chance to lead. Are we seeing that at all a little bit more? Can we do more to try and promote those opportunities and get them involved in our climate storytelling? Because I think it's not just the climate storytelling, it's the climate storyteller that matters. Sam, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think we can absolutely do more. I think that it speaks to the importance of bringing an authentic voice. And I think the young generation is growing up in the midst of all of this. So their perspective is really unique, and that is authentic to the characters that they're going to write and the stories that they're going to tell. So the more that we can lift up those voices in general, I think is more likely to bring climate and sustainability onto screen, because this is a reality that these generations have grown up with. So inherently, by empowering those voices to tell their stories, those are going to bring more climate stories to screen.
And are we seeing that happening? Are we seeing that change? Because I have to say, I admit, I know that I'm trying to do that because I work with athletes. They're generally young. So that's okay. I'm lucky because, you get past 35, you're probably not going to be much use on a football team. So I probably am not going to be interviewing you so much because that you're not an athlete that, I'm looking for. So sport has that benefit. It has young people who are inspirational, and young people, really young people, look up to those 25-year-olds, those 28-year-olds. Are we seeing that change yet? Or do you think that we still need to make a step change for these young voices to be empowered?
I mean, I don't know. I think we'd have to keep supporting that generation and supporting those voices, and bringing a increasingly diverse set of storytellers to this industry and telling these stories is what's going to bring that to life. Yeah,
I hear you. Okay. Catherine, same to you, just on lessons from film and TV in climate storytelling, and again, the youth voice, if you've got anything to add to that particular.
I mean, I totally agree with Sam on the youth voice in terms of in terms of TV, I mean, the youth voice is always the one that's chased. It's the hard audience to get on sort of mainstream TV. So I think that's where it gets particularly exciting with both of your areas, because I think that's where the youth are hanging out.
But it shouldn't be exclusively the domain of a YouTube or an Instagram, right? I mean, like I would love to see this more on Sky. I would love to see it more on the BBC. I think it's this is just my view, Catherine, but I think it's so easy to pigeonhole YouTube. Oh, that's for that demographic. Mainstream TV, it's just Mrs. Brown's Boys and people who are over 60. Do you know what I mean? I just think, we can cross-pollinate if we're smart and we're clever and we're optimal about how we do it.
Completely. I guess I was just referencing the actual, the audience data.
Yeah, the status quo.
Yeah. And in terms of lessons, I mean, I know that you sort of said about meeting people where they are. I mean, we did some research last year, and there's also an Ipsos Mori report that was done at the same time, I think, and it found that, we need to offer up solutions. We need to meet people where they are, which is why it's particularly exciting to have, entertainment shows engaged, quiz shows engaged, cooking shows engaged, because actually that is meeting people where they are.
Yeah.
And there's also, I think, a really nice, I know you referenced some content, but in terms of, there was, obviously probably everyone knows about Blue Planet, and there was sort of a real uproar about plastic pollution. And so what that did is it sort of changed the attitudes of people, particularly in the UK, on plastic pollution. It didn't necessarily create change, but the government then brought in a 5p charge on a plastic bag, and that was completely accepted. Really, it was there was a little bit of grumbling, but people did not want to pay the 5p on the plastic bag, and it just shows that actually this kind of all kind of program can shift attitudes, and that's really, really valuable.
Yeah. Yes, you're right. Sometimes you just need to take the brave decision, don't you? I mean, I often kind of think, what are you going to lose? Viewers over one show? Do you know what? Probably not. Probably not. I think it's an educated gamble that you can make, and it's not going to necessarily you're going to lose out. We're starting to reach the end of the time to chat, but I'm just keen to get through a couple of last things. We're talking here about taking something on, trying to be brave, trying to connect better, trying to empower a youth voice. What's the biggest barrier that you've encountered, and can you try and offer a solution? In terms of climate storytelling, we're trying to bolster how climate storytelling is represented in mainstream entertainment. What's the biggest barrier you face, whether it is internally with your team or whether it is with program makers, and what is the kind of one solution you can offer up to it? Sam, if I can start off with you and we'll go down the line.
Sure. I think one challenge that you can see is that people, if you say tell a story about climate change, they assume it's going to be doom and gloom, or it's going to be not compelling or not entertaining and not connect with audiences. So there is this sort of inherent reaction to a climate story. But if you can think about ways to make the characters connect, one of my favorite little nuggets about this is in the TV show Succession, cousin Greg, who's a bit of a goofball, gets written out of his grandfather's will, and his grandfather instead donates his will to Greenpeace. And cousin Greg goes on to sue Greenpeace, and it's a whole mess. But my favorite fact about that is that Greenpeace saw a surge in interest in people dedicating their wills to their organization.
Yeah.
So it's the right example of how a funny story that's just a funny character beat, but if it has a climate inkling to it or a nudge, people will engage with it, connect with it, and take that off screen.
The power of suggestion.
Yeah. It doesn't have to be go support Greenpeace, but it's a joke, it's funny, people connect with it, it's authentic.
It's almost like you're delivering a message without them being messaged.
Exactly.
Yeah. Catherine, any other little examples? I quite like that one from Sam. But there are some creative ones around, and people who've just taken a little bit of a side look out of left field. We're going to try this, and actually sometimes without knowing, it actually checks out better.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, recently, It's a Sin was on.
Cracking series.
Yeah, amazing. It was about the HIV crisis in the 1980s. It's not. Sorry, this isn't actually an environment story, but again, it was similar in the sense that they got. The testing for HIV increased, but it doubled after that aired, which is extraordinary.
Yeah.
And it shows the power of that TV can do if
Yeah.
you get the story right. You
Yeah.
know, there was no mention of everyone should go and get tested,
Yeah.
but it increased the
Yeah.
moment that it finished airing, and that's
And I think
incredibly
do
powerful.
you know what? It's useful to mention that as another sort of example in a different cause or social impact, etc. Because purpose is the broad topic that we're talking about here, and you can still, make that impact, that positive impact. And as you can see, like with a brilliant series like that, with an absolutely insanely talented lead actor, I just think that was an amazing mechanic off the bat. You just go, wow, I don't know if the filmmakers ever expected that, but that's something that was brilliant to hear. Tamseel, Woda.
I wanted to be the last one, but no.
It's a man for the occasion. I love this. He's got stage presence, hasn't he?
I think he'll do a much better job in closing it than I would. So,
barriers and breakthroughs, guys. That's what we're looking for.
Okay,
Yeah.
Sorry, now. I think one of the biggest barriers that I see, we feel like different screens are different industries, right? They are.
Okay.
They have their own ecosystems.
Yeah.
They have their own gatekeepers. They have their own structures. But if we look at the way the audiences react, right, and the way the audiences create stories, my belief and my intuition, and I've seen this happen in real life, is that the screens are coming closer together. And this process started when streaming platforms became a thing, and they broke an industry that existed, right? And we saw social media platforms changing their algorithms to literally divide and rule slowly, right? But we are slowly seeing that the screens are coming together.
Okay.
And we should be able to dream big. It's no longer a barrier. And I want to give an example of something we started like at the beginning of this year. And most of the year I've spent in the Eastern Himalayas, right? Which is India, Bhutan, Bangladesh. And we've spent time in identifying communities who are aged between 12 to 16 years old. And they're planting 1 billion trees, right? And this is a project by Conservation International, and we're just doing the storytelling part of it. And Conservation International let us train these kids to be able to tell their own stories and commit for 6 years. And next year, the big plan is, instead of doing the typical storytelling, why can't we do a reality show in the Eastern Himalayas that really brings forward how communities are changing?
Yeah.
And a simple story like planting a tree is so different in each and every country. In Bhutan, it's about legacy. Every story, they're giving the freedom to create, right? They're talking about legacy. In India, they're talking about action. In Bangladesh, they're talking about deep-rooted future shifts that can happen.
Okay.
In Nepal, it's about a different trajectory altogether because they're so prone to disasters. And they're all coming together through multiple screens and transforming a region which the world will hear for the first time, and in very innovative, creative ways.
That's amazing. That's
it's
an amazing story. I love so many elements of that. I need to unpack my brain in a bit just to be able to kind of really compute it properly. But if I could just hear from you as well, the biggest kind of challenge you face, but the breakthrough that you feel, especially with the platforms you're on and the audience that you talk to.
I think I have never faced any barrier, but the biggest barrier that I faced was attending COP for the first time. Because I know you're talking about the youth. That was the conversation earlier. How can the youth get to know about stories about climate change? But, I've been here, and I see, people that make decisions, they're having a conversation, and at the end of the day, if you want the youth, the message to transcend to the youth, why there's no single youth giving a speech in there? So at the end of the day, how many youths are interested in listening to the speeches that people came to give? The country leaders. I would never sit down and watch my president talk about climate change. But I would sit down and listen to that young lady from India talking about climate change. And I'll be like, how old are you? How come you know about climate change I have no idea about? So I think it's about time. Next COP, if it's something that I would love to start a petition about, that would be COP 30. Can you include young people on the 100%. Stage? Let them tell us what they are facing, the problem, the challenges, so that it will transcend. That is when the stories, if you tell stories in an authentic way, that is when the stories get to everyone. But as it stands right now, COP29 is too official for my liking. And COP 30, I want to be there but I want to see.
Oh, I've got a sense you're going to be there. Well,
Please. I want to see more stories being told by young people. And I think it will be the game changer for catered one.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No, I agree. I think that this is something that I'm very passionate about. And not just because I have kids, even without having kids. I think I see the importance of young people, not just a sort of a token gesture. Let's just include them just so that we look good for the optics, right? Actually, it's the ability to have a seat at the table, to have a say, to have real agency. And not only that, this is the key thing, to be able to lead a conversation. That's why you should be at places like this. So we'll get you in touch with President Lula.
Thank you. Because at the end of the day, don't forget that the future of this world are the young people in this room. So you cannot exclude them from conversations like this. So it's about time for us to mean business. That's all I'm going to end. Thank you.
And incredible storytelling from the right storytellers. Okay, we're about to wrap up, but before we do, we're going to try one more video. Yes, we've got the nods from over there in the corner. And this comes from Bafta Albert, so maybe, Catherine, you can give us just the briefest of context for this.
Yeah, so this is examples of climate storytelling that have mainly been made in the last year. Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes.
It's kind of designed for creatives, so it's designed to sort of inspire them, really. But I wanted to show it here so you can all get a sense of kind of what sort of stories are out there, really.
Okay, great. Let's roll the VT. Making really compelling storytelling happen on whatever platform that we operate on, and we can keep inspiring audiences in positive climate action. It's been a thrill chatting to you. Thank you very much indeed. Bye-bye.